Ordinarily, this would be the biggest recruiting weekend of the year for LSU. Bama comes to town, and it's a veritable who's who of five-star athletes. So tell me what a COVID LSU Alabama game will look like.
So the exact opposite. So remember, and for everyone who's listening, they're in an ongoing dead period, which has been going on since mid-March, where recruits and coaches can have no face-to-face contact, no in-person contact. So they're not able to host any kids, not able to give them tickets. So anyone who wants to come would have to do so on their own dime and find their own tickets, and then obviously sit through the game. I'm not sure how interested LSU is in having a ton of guys in to watch the game, but perhaps they probably put a little bit more confidence than all of us do in the outcome on Saturday. But Maason Smith, five-star, number one player in Louisiana, will be there. Garrett Nussmeier, a couple of kids from Texas, will be there. And then Shamar Turner, who's really one of the top 50 players in the country, borderline five-star defensive end, will be there. And that's notable. Everybody had always thought it was Alabama and Texas A&M. LSU's been in the mix there a bit. Now they get them on the campus right before. I mean, we're right butting up to the very end of things, 12 days away from signing day, which is when I would expect LSU is going to sign most of their class. So, a lot different than what a normal weekend would be, which would have 10 kids and all their families. So you've got, 50, 60 people up there with all the coaches eating meals and watching the game and doing tours, and they don't have any of that right now.
All right, Shea, so obviously we're at that point in the recruiting cycle when some of the early commitments are being asked to look elsewhere, and you're starting to free some spots up because you see where your attrition is going to be, you see what your depth looks like. And so right now, if you're LSU, how are you trying to close out this class? Who is the must-have prospects that LSU is trying to get for that early signing period?
Well, I mentioned Maason Smith. Obviously, you always want to keep the top player in Louisiana home, especially when Georgia, Alabama, schools like that are recruiting him. And they seem to be, sitting well there. They've always been considered the team to beat. And for a kid out of deep South Louisiana, it's tough to imagine that in a year where he wasn't able to make a bunch of visits and sit with coaches face-to-face, that he winds up going anywhere but LSU. And I know a lot of people have talked about Corey Foreman, and he was going to come this weekend. Now he's not. A lot of people think he might wind up at Southern Cal or Clemson, which is kind of where everything started there. It was the hometown team versus the team he was once committed to. But we'll see how that plays out. But the answer, Jacob, is no doubt Tristan Lee. And after that, it's anyone who plays offensive line that's a high-level prospect. Because we look at the team right now, and you point out O-line is a need, not only a need position, but a position they've struggled at on the field this year. And look, the silver lining could be, yes, that nobody's eligibility counts, right? So that everybody on this O-line can be back next year. In theory, you've got another year to bring up the guys behind them. Perhaps some of them are able to compete for a starting job. And then you bring in this class and you say, okay, we're in okay shape. I mean, that's 13 guys on the team right now, but it's not going to happen. And it's going to be important for O to recruit Ed Ingram and Deculus and some of these older guys who certainly will have a chance to test the NFL waters to come back again, because I think they need, you can say whatever you want about how some of these guys play. If they had better, they'd be playing them. And I think that they need as many bodies as they can get. So Tristan Lee, a five-star offensive tackle, would be I'm not going to say immediate starter, but maybe, and he's going to compete to play early and certainly give you a few years of starting reps, or at least a couple. So that's the kind of guy they don't normally get. Louisiana doesn't put out elite offensive tackles very often. I mean, Cody Ford and Lael Collins are probably the two across the past decade that have really been really big name guys, and Lael was 10 years ago. So, I mean, we're moving beyond that, and they've got to go out and find them. And a guy like Tristan Lee, I think, is just a must for them, given how long they've been on him and how big of a need he is.
Shea, we have a question out of the Bayou Ford chat asking you to comment on Jordan Gilbert, the safety from U High, and Brian Thomas, the wide receiver from Walker.
Yeah, I love Jordan Gilbert. Look, and I'm all for LSU making an offer, which they did last month to him. I think he's a dynamic safety, and we've got him ranked as a top 10 safety. And I think as much as protecting Louisiana is getting reestablished at U High. I mean, it makes you sick to your stomach, Charlie, when you look at Alabama's defense and the two leading tacklers are both with high school and LSU's campus. The leading tackle for loss and sacks guy, went to high school at Southern Lab. I mean, these are guys who are in Baton Rouge, and LSU offered him and obviously recruited them all at different stages. But that's how you have to lock up not just the state, but here. And I think they see that with Gilbert, who's a big-time player at a need position. Safety is another one. Then you look at Brian Thomas, and Gilbert's going to announce January 2nd. And I think LSU's in a good spot. Now, he's got some other options, A&M, Mississippi State, Bama, Oklahoma. But I think at the end of the day, maybe he leans towards staying home and can see a path to the field playing for LSU. Brian Thomas, we won't have to worry about these next couple of weeks. He's going to wait until February to decide. He keeps things really close to the vest. He doesn't do much on Twitter, social media, doesn't do a lot of interviews, won't really ever say much, and not so much by design, but I just think that's kind of guy he is, the kid he is. He's just quiet, and people have educated guessed that maybe A&M's the team to beat. Jimbo Fisher's been after him hard. Alabama's in there, LSU's in there, but what I really like about what LSU did is that they went out and got 3 top 100 receivers out of the gate, and they've held on to all of them, and we'll see if they all sign, obviously, in a couple of weeks. But then they added Jack Besh, who's the state's most productive receiver, and really, guys put themselves into a position where in February, if Brian Thomas signs, awesome. You've got one of the top 5 receivers in the country. If he doesn't, you're not left at the altar because you ended up recruiting a really strong receiver class that's up there with the best in the country.
Hey, real quick, you mentioned Tristan Lee, and obviously that's the name that we're all paying attention to. But when you start to look across the board, Shea, there's not really another offensive lineman, top tier wise that LSU's on because all these other guys are committed or leaning somewhere else. And so if you don't get Tristan Lee, I mean, is that a doomsday scenario because you've put so much chips towards his basket?
Yeah, I mean, I think LSU would consider that a doomsday scenario. And look, they cast a wide net at the start of this class. I mean, they were after it with a lot of the top offensive tackle prospects in the country. And I truly believe had they been able to host visitors in the spring and summer and for games, and obviously the season hasn't gone as they wished it would, but when kids are over there talking about talking with the staff about the national championship, they're taking pictures with the trophies, they're getting to see the Heisman, all that stuff is how Alabama and Clemson and programs like that have popped big name out-of-state kids who are on that first visit, and they kind of get sold on the atmosphere. And I think LSU was kind of hamstrung by that in a way. And Lee's the one guy they made it all the way till now, despite all that. And he's made visits on his own dime, all that. And it's just always felt like, okay, LSU has a real shot here. This could really be them. And now we're in these nervous moments at the end where he's going to go to Oklahoma this weekend. He'll be at Florida the next weekend. And as he gets closer to that January 2nd decision, kind of where is he really leaning? I think that his mom is certainly someone who would like to, I won't say like to see him at LSU, but would be more than okay with him being at LSU. She would end up moving to wherever he goes. But it's all about what Tristan's thinking. And I think LSU and Oklahoma are sort of having to go back and forth here. And I think that will happen all the way down to the wire. But if it's not him, it's not necessarily boom or bust, Jake, right? I mean, they've got a couple of other targets out there. They're on some JUCO guys. O mentioned last night that they probably don't need to sign a full 25 so that they can give themselves some room for the transfer market, which you don't know what's there. And it's sort of like what's behind door number 1. There might be nothing, or there might be a really elite player. And they're willing to take that risk because I think they have to. But we'll see what happens. I think that they're in it with Tristan Lee for sure. But I think there's going to be some real nervous moments over this next month.
Shea, we got about a minute left. One more from one of our listeners, and this is about Darius McGhee, the corner out of Pensacola Catholic.
Yeah, and Steve Wiltfong put in a crystal ball pick for LSU to land him today. I put mine in about a week ago when he decommitted from Tennessee. There were some thoughts he might get back with the Vols class and Pruitt, and then Miami and LSU were considered the teams to beat, but everything we're hearing right now is it's going to be LSU, and that's good. Look, they've got one corner committed in Nate Wiggins. This is another top 10 cornerback, very long, athletic kid, type of guy that Corey likes at corner, and I expect him to announce in the coming weeks or maybe on signing day and then sign with LSU in the early period. So that'll be a really nice ad for them. They needed a couple corners. They got 2 top 10 cornerbacks. Or I expect them to, I should say.
Shea Dixon, go 247. We appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on pregame.
Oh, Charlie, it's a standing offer still if you want to trade jobs. You did so well yesterday on the recruiting segment.
I'm just you come up with a definition for uncommittable offer or soft commitment that we find palatable, and I'll consider it. How's that?
I'm going to be unable to do that.
Yeah,
So keep your day job.
I figured as much. Shea, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, bye, guys.